Hi, and welcome to Freedom Fighters Code Gray. This is a TV show where we discuss human trafficking, an issue that's impacting our community right here in Simcoe County. We often think of human trafficking as something that happens overseas in other countries and other places, and we don't take the time to recognize, or maybe just we don't even know that it's happening here in our backyard. In Canada, over 90% of the people trafficked in Canada are from within Canada's borders. So today with me, I'm really excited to introduce our special guest, Jessica Ortiz, who's a freedom fighter. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you.
Well, I'm really excited just to hear more about your work to fight human trafficking and to understand just the different ways that people can get involved in our community to fight this injustice.
Yes.
So, what is human trafficking? Some folks listening may have never heard about trafficking, or they're just starting to understand what it is. What exactly is human trafficking?
So, human trafficking is basically some kind of force or manipulation or coercion for someone's personal gain. And there often involves that leads to exploitation of somebody. So there's that abuse of exploitation, and most people think it's like kidnapping somebody, and trafficking them from one country to another so that they can maybe work for you and things like that. But honestly, there's so many different forms of human trafficking. But the one that I focus on is the sexual exploitation or sex trafficking. And also, in some cases, I help to bring more awareness about the labor trafficking as well.
So you mentioned that there's different types of exploitation and forms of trafficking. Do you mind just kind of listing off what those different types are?
Yeah, so there is domestic servitude, right? So like having to come to a country and then work to basically, keep the home, take all of these responsibilities, but then they don't get paid equal wage. And also there's organ harvesting as well, and that is basically trafficking people for their organs.
So when did you first hear about human trafficking?
So I first heard about human trafficking when I attended a social justice film festival with Five Drive Foundation. And this was back in 2012, or 2010, sorry. And so when I attended that film festival, I saw two films, one called War Child and one called Call and Response. When I saw those films, it honestly just wrecked me. Like I had no idea that human trafficking was happening, and I didn't even know that it was actually not just in lands far away, but in our own city, in our own neighborhoods. And it actually kind of brought light into certain situations that I've seen in the past that I now recognize as human trafficking.
You say that when you watched the films, they wrecked you.
Yeah.
What was it in the film? Was there a scene? Was there a story? What really moved you deeply?
Yeah, so in particular with the film Call and Response, it was about a bunch of young guys coming together from America, traveling to Cambodia and documenting undercover what they've seen in the brothels. And so they were interviewing young girls as young as, I think, 4 years old, like offering themselves in different services to these, rich white folk. And I still remember the scenes, and I could still even hear the sounds. And it's kind of etched in my mind, and it. When I say it wrecked me, I honestly felt like a rumbling in my own spirit that I can only describe as a taste of what God says in the Word, which is a hate for wickedness, a perfect hate for wickedness, and a love for righteousness. Kind of rose up inside of me, and I knew after seeing that I'd have to do something about what I just seen. I couldn't just live with what I knew or what I was exposed to, and that I had to do something. Yeah.
So you say you had to do something, and your spirit within you is rumbling
Yeah.
and being just overwhelmed, I'd imagine as well, just from the images and the sounds that you heard that were being depicted in this film. What did you do next?
So actually, the reason why I went to the Social Justice Film Festival was to do research on how to put on a Christian film festival. That's what I initially wanted to do. But when I saw the film and I heard Dr. Cornel West said, "Justice is what love looks like in public," I knew that I needed to show social justice films. And so from there, I focused on the genre of social justice films in terms of the films that I collected, and I pre-screened, and also were able to like share with other people and different audiences.
So you watch these films, and then your next step. So you're going to already kind of start a social justice film festival, right?
Yeah.
Or a Christian-focused film festival. And then you do it, like, how long did that take? Like, what was your vision for your first TCIFF event, and what did that event look like? What film did you show?
Yeah, so it took about 2 years. So in 2012, we launched our first film festival with multiple screenings, and I've never done anything like that before. So it took a couple years to set up the website and write a business plan and meet with people who have done film screenings before, and other festival directors, and just try to learn the ropes of how to do this and do it well. And I had to gather, volunteers and just communicate the vision everywhere I went. And I was intentional about going to certain events and letting people know that this was something that was really heavy on my heart, and I really felt like God wanted me to do this. And yeah, like honestly, sometimes I was met with great encouragement, and sometimes I was met with like, "You're way in over your head." But God, I'm telling you, like God showed up, because He provided the films, He provided all the resources. We had no money. We had I had no experience. I had no idea how to get this going, but we raised about like $10,000 in the first year to be able to make it happen. So, and we filled the house, so I was so thankful.
That's amazing. So your first time putting on a film festival, you feel like you're, not equipped or not sure exactly how this goes together with limited resources, and then you're able to raise $10,000 and have a full screening. What are those funds used for that, you raise within the film festival?
So most of it went back into, the event itself, but then and then it would go into doing more film screenings. So we do something called TCIFF Outreach as well, where we go into the schools, we go into community centers and churches, basically any place that would have me, and I would share, a social justice film. We'd have discussions about it, and then we'd engage people to action. In particular, the youth, which is fantastic. I love seeing the youth get excited about the fact that, they don't have to feel helpless about the injustices that they see in these films, but that they can play a part in the solutions.
Is there a film that you showed to a group of youth that had, a really big impact on someone's life, and then maybe led them to a tangible action step? Can you think of, someone that saw the film and then responded in a way that you were like, yes, that's amazing?
You know what? I think there's a couple. One that sticks out for me is a film that I showed at a grade 7 and 8 class. And I could just see the hunger for mentorship that these children had, because I went into an area that they didn't have a lot of privilege. And so I think for them to see that they can use the power of social media to bring awareness about human trafficking. They can continue on with the conversation. They can also volunteer at different places and different events, and volunteer with me, like for TCIFF events and stuff like that. So I think that was really cool to see them, wanting to get involved. And one cool thing was like one of the grade 7s was like, can I get your autograph? Like he was asking me, and I was like, no, I'm not gonna give you my autograph, but God bless you. But it just shows that they were seeing something different than what they normally see in their environment, in their neighborhood. And I think that it gave them kind of like a hope. Hey, I can do something more than what I see on the streets. Yeah.
And when you go into, a school and you're showing a film, why do you do that? Why do you think it's important to educate youth using film?
Well, one, because I feel like I've benefited from watching social justice films. Like I've benefited by hearing other people's stories from all around the world. And again, people in Canada and in Toronto, hearing their stories, but through film, it just seems to impact me in a certain way where I can feel like I can help retell the story by sharing films as well, and then having discussions about it, and then saying, okay, well, what are you good at? What are your gifts? What are your talents? How can we pull them together and do something about what we just saw, right? So I feel like I get to give that gift back to others, right? Especially the youth. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And I love that you said that they watch the film, but then there's a response. There's a discussion. Why is that discussion so important? Why is that so critical?
Oh my goodness. I feel like one of the focuses that we have with TCIFF is media consciousness, right? So that we'll share film, but we also ask questions directly with the audience and ask them, was there an image that stuck out for you, or a piece of dialogue that stuck out for you, and why? Is there something that you feel like you could take away with you and share with others? What would that be? And so these discussions lead to very rich discussions, which cause them to kind of reflect on their own lives and to see if there's any relatability. And then I feel like that also helps them to just digest the information that they just saw, but also figure out, hey, is there anything that we can do to help? Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jessica, for sharing about TCIFF and how you got started. We're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back to continue discussing how we can raise awareness about human trafficking through film. Welcome back to Freedom Fighters Code Grey. Today I have with me Jessica Ortiz, and she's a freedom fighter who is talking about her journey starting TCIFF, which is a film festival to help raise awareness about human trafficking. So can you explain a bit more, what does TCIFF stand for, and what is TCIFF all about?
Sure. So TCIFF is TCIFF, Toronto Cornerstone International Film Fest, and essentially our tagline is social justice through film, faith, and forum. So we like to basically bring awareness about social justice issues through film, and then have discussions about it, and then engage people to action.
That's amazing. You mentioned have discussions about the film. Is there a particular format that you use to engage the audience in dialogue about the film?
Yes, actually, something that is unique about TCIFF is that after the film screenings, we like to have something called CVAQs, which is conscious viewing as advised questions. And that's the time where we ask the audience directly, certain questions like, what imagery stuck out for you? What scene stuck out for you, and why? And to be able to digest what they've just seen, because I know some of these issues are so hard hitting, and some of these scenes can turn into nightmares if you don't know how to deal with them or process them. And so this is a time where we get to discuss, how they process the film, but then we also like to ask questions like, okay, well, did you see a message of hope in there? Is there something that you feel like God is telling you that you can do to help be part of the solution, not be part of the problem? Did you learn something new? Can you have a takeaway from this, and would you share that with others?
That's so great, because education without that empowerment piece can be really difficult, right? Someone could leave watching a film about human trafficking and feel completely overwhelmed, right? And so to help people process the information that they're seeing and understanding, but then also being like, you can be a part of change, like you can do something. I think education with empowerment is so key. I kind of want to throw a CVAQ back to you.
Yeah.
So, could you share a film that you've watched and what is a scene from that film that has just kind of stuck with you, that you think about, and why did it stick with you?
So the film that I'm thinking about right now is Call and Response, because that was one of the first films that I saw. And so I mentioned that scene about that little girl who was offering a bunch of different services to a man. And that scene is very much etched in my mind. Another one, though, is another film, actually, is The Pink Room. And that's basically about a brothel home, or a brothel place that had a designated pink room for the young virgins. And so I think about the pink room, because what they did was, after they raided the brothel, a church came in and they basically painted the pink room yellow. And they tore down the pink room, actually, and then painted the whole place yellow. And it was just like a symbol of redemption and hope. And they turned that place into a place where young girls can now live and grow in the love of Christ. And so, like, those are some films that really stuck out for me.
When you say the scene or the imagery of, the pink room, where unfathomable injustice was happening to young people, and then it's kind of, teared down and something yellow was created. Why do you think, because you've seen a lot of films on human trafficking, why does that stick with you? Why does that resonate with you? How did you process that film, and then how did you move forward after being moved by it?
Yeah. I feel like, again, the imagery of a pink room, I think that it was symbolic because the Johns would know that it was a virgin because they would bleed, right? The girls would bleed. And so the walls being pink just made me think about the robbing of innocence of childhood. And I actually grew up in a home where there was a lot of dysfunction and domestic violence and abuse. And I remember as a little girl, though I wasn't necessarily directly abused, I remember wanting to protect my mom and wanting to do something but feeling so helpless. And so I don't know why, but I feel like there's some kind of a connection as to why I'm so passionate about anti-human trafficking work or anti-sex trafficking. I think it's because I want to say that I can do something now and help other young girls or women, even men now, that are in those situations.
Thank you, Jessica, for just being open and vulnerable and sharing part of your story with me. There's so many films that you have viewed and that you've shown and that you've screened. What are some of those films, and what are each one about, and how are they different?
I've shown some really cool films. I screened She Has a Name. So that is like a docudrama about human trafficking that happens in Cambodia, but it's about I think he's an American undercover cop, and he goes into the brothels trying to save someone who's being trafficked there, and but he builds a relationship with that person, and he sees that like he really wants to personally save her, and there's a lot of roadblocks in there, but what I liked about it, and I hope I'm not spoiling the film, but it doesn't always end up happy, and I think that it's a message based on realities that are unfortunately happening right now. And so it's like, what do we do with that? So that's one film. There's so many. Trade of Innocence was a fantastic film as well, by Christopher Bissett. I feel like that was with Mira Sorvino and a great cast, and it was a privilege and honor to screen that film and to have Christopher Bissett share with our audience about the filmmaking process and the things that he's seen while he was shooting in Cambodia. So yeah, I recommend that film. Like, there's so many. Los Traficantes was more of a drug trafficking focus, and yeah, in Mexico. Another one was Live 58, which is based on the scripture Isaiah 58, and it talks about different injustices, like not just human trafficking, but poverty around the world and what we can do to help with that, and just being aware of fair trade and stuff like that.
For some of these films that you're mentioning, if someone who's watching the show today wants to check out the film, is there a way for them to do that?
Yeah. So actually, if you go onto our site, tciff.ca, tciff.ca, I list all the films that we've screened in the past, and then in there you can go to the links. Yeah.
And what's next for you, Jessica? What's your vision? What's your dream for TCIFF as it grows and continues down the road?
It's funny you ask that question, because right now I realized that when I was learning how to put on a film festival and how to organize one, it really focuses on bringing a bunch of films together and people together, which I love. But there is a competition at the end of the day, and you award and you honor what people deem the best. And for me, I realize I'm gonna be straying away from that, and I just love showing film and showing social justice films. So we're gonna be doing something called Films for Freedom, which I'm really excited about, where we just like to share the social justice films and have discussions about it and engage people to action. And I still want to incorporate aspects of the Christian faith, because I feel like when we look at these problems and these issues all around the world, I feel like it's just so much bigger than us. And so it causes me to go on my knees and seek God's intervention, and how he wants us as individuals, how he wants us to respond to the call, and how he wants us as either a body or as people coming together, as an organization, how can we respond together, right, and make huge impact. And so yeah, I'm excited about Films for Freedom, and I'm excited also about Worship for Freedom. So Worship for Freedom is more like the part of the response as well. And again, just crying out to God, God, this is way bigger than us. We need your help. We need your intervention. We need help.
I love that you use film as a medium to raise awareness on an issue that's in our community, throughout Ontario, throughout Canada, around the world. And film has such a way, as you mentioned earlier, of just captivating stories and sharing stories and giving voice to stories that may be silenced around the world. Can you share with me a bit about why do you believe art is such a powerful medium for creating change?
I find that the art of storytelling is something that helps to teach concepts, helps to share visions, helps to, again, share people's stories that have never had a chance to share their story. It gives people a voice. And so I feel like sharing film in and of itself is promoting social justice. So I feel like by sharing film, you can help people understand certain things that they've never been exposed to. And then also, what I love about the TCIFF or a festival setting is that we can, again, help people figure out what they can do to help. And so at the end of our festivals, we typically have a bunch of, or a good handful of booth presentations from other organizations and other missions, where it's so cool because once they start to meet one another, they can combine forces, right? And do really neat things, really like creative things. I've seen where two different organizations, they came together and they created a social justice film using their gifts and talents and resources. So yeah.
That's amazing. That's so neat. And Jessica, I just want to thank you so much for your courage in having this vision and being able to carry it out, and for using film as a way to raise awareness on this issue that's impacting so many people's lives around the world. And I'd like to thank you viewers for taking the time to watch Freedom Fighters Code Gray. If you or someone you know is being trafficked and they are in immediate danger, please call 911. If you're looking for support and resources, you can call our Canadian Human Trafficking Hotline at 1-833-900-1010. Again, that's 1-833-900-1010. Thanks for taking the time to watch our show, and we hope to catch you next week.